Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of our CRX all-wheel drive project. This one is featuring a K Series transplant. The last episode you saw us install this K20 engine with the CRV all-wheel drive transmission using Hossport motor mounts. You saw all the parts that we had to do, the welding, the painting, the prep work in the bay. Today we're going to be working on the axles, the shift cables, and some brake lines. In the swap, you can see we did leave a lot of things. Guys that have done CRX builds before know that this stuff needs to be removed, but it was important for me to leave it in. It's going to be a little bit more work on my end to do the stuff with the engine in place, but the reason I'm doing that is for your benefit. Those that have not done a K Series swap before in this chassis need to know the why. In my opinion, the why is way more important than the what. What does what mean? In that context, one could just show you what to do, not why what you are doing. To me, it's important that you know why we're doing the things we need to do. There's a big motor in a small chassis, and to get all of this to work, things have to be moved, like the brake lines. This right here has become commonplace. Most people that have done EFK swaps know that they just have to move the brakes. And the why is that the engine just needs to fit, and the only way that it's going to fit is if those things moved. I'm going to refer you to our budget EF like I have in the last video. That's going to be on the VTech Academy. We show you how to keep the factory lines in place and how we can just move the proportioning valve all the way over to the firewall, kind of how you saw it right there. But I'm going to be introducing another product. This product is a brake line kit that I'm going to be releasing for this particular swap. I may have other brake lines coming out in the future, but as of right now, this will be available by the time you see this video. If you're just hearing about Hush Performance, in 2018 we did a full lineup of brake tucks. A few months after that, we discovered that there could be an issue with how some of the lines were ran, and we actually pulled back off of that to do some redevelopment. Auto manufacturers have done their homework, and the way that they set up the brake lines is perfect. Why mess up a good thing? We'll just leave it the way that it is. What we're going to do is make it more swap friendly. The OEM master cylinder and brake booster can stay in place. You can see how the brake lines are ran all the way over to the proportioning valve. The proportioning valve determines how much fluid gets to the front and to the rear, and then it distributes that accordingly. Two of these lines are coming from your OEM master cylinder. Two of these lines are going to go to your front brakes, and then these two are going to the back brakes. From the OEM, the brakes are set up with a fail-safe. You'll notice that there's going to be two outlets on your OEM master cylinder. One of the outlets is going to handle one front wheel and one rear wheel, and the other is going to handle one front and one rear. In the event that you ever lose brake pressure in one of your brakes, you will have brakes on the other side. We're going to retain that factory setup, but we're going to be replacing the hard lines with some soft line. Soft line is referring to stainless steel braided brake hose. To get the proportioning valve off of the shock tower over to the firewall, that means we're going to have to bend the hard lines all the way over. That means that the brake lines down there could get kinked. What we're going to do is replace the hoses coming from here onto the firewall with our stainless steel braided hose. We're going to keep back lines as they are. Now this would have been much easier with the engine out of the car. I chose to do it with the motor in place so that the guys that have the swap already would know that it can be done with the engine installed. Now that the engine's in, let's see how much room we have for the transfer case. There it is, guys. There is a ton of room. You know, I thought there might be some issues with the steering rack here, but there's certainly not. It looks good to go. Let's see what it looks like from the top. You know, Lots of room. There's no notching in the rear cross member in the rear subframe that was needed. It's like it was meant to be there. As we start the brake line removal, go ahead and bleed your system. Drain it of all the brake fluid that you have in the car. That way it's not dripping all over the place. When you get brake fluid on the paint, it loves to eat it. That's something that you don't want on your paint if you want to keep your paint. I'm going to be using a pneumatic bleeder from Harbor Freight. This one is by Pittsburgh, but this right here is about 35 bucks opposed to spending a few hundred from other brands. This works absolutely great. For what I've needed to use it for, bleeding brakes, bleeding clutches, it's done me very well and it's very cost effective. I'm going to be starting off by removing the brake fluid reservoir, and I'm going to drain the fluid by dipping this guy right in there, and then I'll move into the calipers. Alright, so here's a couple of points you need to look out. There's these plastic clips here that are attached to the firewall. They're on there very well. They do a good job of securing the lines to the body. That's going to take some work to get off of. There's one here, and there's one down there along the frame rail. Jeez, you can't even see it. It's just behind this wiring harness and everything. You can't quite see it. It's all there. And there's going to be a 10mm bolt under there that you can grab. So then you remove the lines from the master cylinder, and then we're just going to be focusing on these 4 lines on the proportioning valve, and then the final removal will be the one inside the wheel well. Oh, man. There, the brake lines are attached from the master cylinder. They're attached from the firewall, and we completely remove the proportioning valve, which I'll get to in a moment. And the lines in the wheel well are also loosened and disconnected. When disconnecting the lines from the proportioning valve, it's a good idea to pay attention to what lines went where. Our line kit that we're going to provide will come with the diagram on where our lines should meet up at the proportioning valve. Now that all we'll have to do is pull the line out from inside the wheel well, and this whole thing will come out as one unit. Now, if the engine was out while we were doing this, chances are this could come out much better. Now notice that this is the front brakes and master cylinder lines only, okay? We're going to keep the rear lines intact and try not to bend those a whole lot because we're going to be reusing those. Now we can start making our brake lines. There is a Hot Wheels car out there that maybe some of you guys even have. It's the Gritty white hatchback. That's an actual car. Well, while Kenji was building the car, he hit us up and wanted some custom brake lines for it. So we made him some. That's actually the same brake line kit that we're going to utilize in our swap here. Brakes are very important and they need to be done well. That's not something that you should take lightly. And I just didn't have very much confidence in some of the kits that we were thinking about designing where it would involve cutting and flaring into the rear lines. So we're just not going to do that either. And I also thought about eliminating as many connections as possible. When starting out a brake line kit, we would set up the brake lines in theory. Here are a bunch of different ones that we've worked out in the past. And then when we come to an idea of what they need to look like, then we have a full schematic. So we'll look up the one we're looking for now. This one's pretty intricate, isn't it? Look at all those. There's another one. So here's a good example. You know, this was a really clean looking install, but you know, each one of these points represents a connection. These really need to be installed by somebody who does this on a regular basis. And this style, I decided that maybe we weren't ready for the masses yet. So this is the one we're looking for. We'll read our schematic. It tells me what fittings I'm going to be using at what connection, and then how long the length needs to be and where it's going to attach. So here we're going straight from our OEM master as it reads there, and then the lines are going to come into the prop valve, and then from the prop valve they're going to get distributed where they need to go. That's it. We got 4 custom lines made. I'm digging the way that this is going to be set up. So you saw our crimper here. It is DOT approved. We're using DOT approved brake line and crimps, really high quality stuff. And also what makes it DOT is that we're going to test every single line before they leave. All right, so what this does is it pushes test fluid in through the line, and this right here is a stopper. So the fluid goes through the line and then basically gets plugged over here, and then this gauge here measures the PSI there, and we test it up to 3,000 PSI. What we'd be looking for is fluid squirting out of these hoses. We don't see anything, we don't see any drips going on there, and it's holding pressure very well. 4 lines, it looks like they're equal length, but they all have their own little lengths, and how you'll know which lines go where, well, it will also come with this little diagram. Now what I'd like to do is add the banjo and the banjo bolts now. It's a good starting point, and it gives us a place to connect our lines when we run them. So I'm going to attach these loosely so that a way it can move freely, and when we attach the other lines we're most likely going to have to move the proportioning valve around a few times to get it right, and it will help those lines swing over a little bit better. On Budget EF we did it right there where the OEM charcoal canister used to be, and then the fuel filter. But that may not be anything that you need to worry about. I'm not sure if we're going to use an OEM filter on this one just yet. I'm still thinking about it. When we get to that point, then we'll make our decision. Now, you'll see that there's the brackets back here. You know, it doesn't look like it's too much in the way. And this right here holds the charcoal canister. Now, if you wanted to get crazy and do a nice tuck and shave, I guess you could drill that out. Obviously with the engine in place, that's not going to be easy to do, and I don't see it really causing an issue. I think I'm going to put some spacers back there to to raise that bracket so that it's not completely flush against the wall. It will have maybe a few millimeter spacers back there to compensate for these pieces that are sticking out, which would prevent it from laying flush anyway. And the idea of me having all this stuff in place already was to show that you can do this with the engine in, or if you wanted to upgrade from what you have already. Not bad. You know, the angle of it, everything, look at that. That came out pretty good. I'm pretty stoked about that. Now that that's mounted, we can go ahead and start adding in our lines. Alright, now that's looking like it right there. I routed one of the hoses on the other side so that it would run a bit more parallel to the other, and down there you can see how they're grouped really nicely all the way over here. Alright, and there's one more line that's going to run along these two that's going to go to that front wheel over there. Clock gauge is important for you to pay attention to, so you'll see the static pictures that I'll post just after this about what it should look like when it's finished. The passenger side lines ran through, and I'm showing you this one so I can show you how it goes through the fender well. Clean up the lines here. We're going to send you with some ties and this clamp here. It's going to bolt onto that factory tab right there in the center of the screen. There you can see the hose is attached to the tab. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the back side of the tab and bend it forward. What that's going to do is force the line to pull away from the sway bar. We want to avoid any moving parts with the brake lines, of course. You know, this is definitely something you want to take your time installing. Brakes are probably the most important part of the vehicle. This is something you want to take your time in. Someone who's working on brakes should be well versed in brakes. If you are a novice at this might not be a part for you. Seek professional help. Fully installed. We got the lines secured over there. We got them grouped together with some ties. It's pretty solid. The proportioning valves on there rock hard, man, and that's it. And our rear lines are tightened also. You know, this took pretty much all day. I didn't think it was going to take this long to do, so that means that this is going to conclude this episode. We only got through the brakes, so that means the next episode that we're going to have coming up is going to be handling at least the axles and the shifter and cables. I'm excited about the shifter. You know, anyone who hasn't seen it yet, I think they could enjoy it. It's something a little bit different. Guys, thank you very much for tuning in. Make sure to check out our sister channel. Make sure to check out our website at hushperformance.com. Any of the products that you have seen here in this episode will be linked right down below. Guys, thank you very much. And like always, happy tuning. Oh my goodness. This thing is coming out so awesome. I mean, it looks so trick. All the bolts on here and the way that this shifter looks, I mean, it looks all mechanical. I mean, this thing's starting to look super, super rad.